Hello, and thank you for tuning into this week's episode of Bite-Sized Cybercrime, the podcast where we discuss cybercrimes and cybersecurity news. This week, we'll be talking about a brand new type of malware that is infecting vehicles via a firmware update on an Android-based vehicle head. The firmware is from DoFun, which is a budget aftermarket dashboard screen, so this doesn't natively exist in any cars. However, this is the first malware infection specifically targeting Android-based vehicle head units that I'm aware of. A vehicle head unit is really just the central digital control panel in a car that allows you to do things like change music, hands-free calling, and may have other smartphone integrations. So naturally, makes it a pretty good target for malware. This malware ultimately serves as a downloader to do two other things. The first one is ad fraud. The car computing device is to act as a user clicking on ads when really no such thing is occurring naturally in order to drive up ad revenue from somewhere. However, it also creates a proxy botnet, which can be abused in many other types of cyber attacks by turning the cars into nodes for hackers to exploit in the future while disguising their location. Basically, they can use the car's IP address instead of their own so that things are obscured a little. Proxy botnets are pretty common on smaller computers like the ones in cars, or even Internet of Things smart devices. The computing devices on there are very simple, but they are able to connect to the internet, which makes them perfect for doing such a thing, and making it pretty easy to disguise your location by hopping through multiple of these machines. The malware is spread via built-in updaters of the firmware of DoFun head units, and it's suspected the threat actor group called MoU is behind it, as they do a similar advertisement fraud and similar proxy schemes on unsuspecting devices, so the behavior aligns pretty well. As cars become computers and aftermarket upgrades become more and more popular, something like this may be seen more frequently, where the vendors of these fancy aftermarket dashboards have some vulnerabilities in their process, which can introduce malicious software. They even feature a SIM card slot so internet access is enabled for advanced navigation and continuous software updates. They want you to be updating these things regularly and basically constantly connected to the internet. The malware has a limited amount of commands and displays invasive advertisements, which of course we all love. We all definitely want to see more of those now in our car. It can open links, download and execute other files, and open web browsers. The downloading and execution ability is what's used to grab the proxy botnet malware off the internet. So it's really a very simple form of malware that doesn't actually do a ton to interfere with the user besides showing more ads, which, yeah, I would be pretty annoyed if I got malware on my car that just showed me ads all day. But I think many users may actually just blame this on the manufacturer not knowing it's malware and have no idea what's actually going on in their vehicle. It would be my initial instinct to assume that, hey, after I had some use out of this new aftermarket install, suddenly ads appear. Yeah, I mean, that sounds like how modern technology is going these days. So, what exactly can be done about this? Preventative measures are going to be the best for this type of thing because these computers, they're not super easy to fix. We'll get into that a bit. But preventatively, I would personally avoid aftermarket dashboards as much as possible and just stick with what comes with your car for the most part. A lot of these aftermarket upgrades are not really super regulated and don't have a ton of security standards they have to follow, making them more likely to be vulnerable. And many are from smaller and newer companies with limited support capabilities. If you stick with the default option that just comes with your car companies have more obligations to fix everything, and they will also be able to provide more customer support. Currently, we don't have a lot of methods to really prevent this besides just not doing it until the vendor releases some kind of patch, which is kind of how software development works in general, but if you're missing out on the new updates, you may also miss out on new features along with the malware. It's a bit of a trade-off in that way, and it's a lot harder to work on these types of devices, as I mentioned earlier. They often aren't made with security in mind and may have a very limited anti-malware capability. And the access you as the owner have is also going to be relatively locked down compared to the access you have on a normal laptop where you can basically do what you want. You're the administrator, you own it. On these types of devices, they do generally lock down the security settings pretty hard, even if you purchased it. It's just not very realistic to expect the average car owner to know how to deal with a situation like this on their own either. These things usually don't run on Windows. They're going to be on a much different operating system than most people are used to and have no idea how to interact with. So, really, just avoiding putting yourself in this scenario is probably the best thing you can do at the moment. Thank you to Bleeping Computer, the Hacker News, and PC Mag for information on this type of malware, which we haven't really seen before. I'll be really interested to see if, more of this happens in the future, which I'm sure it will, but it will be interesting to see how new types of technology evolve with cybersecurity. And of course, thank you for tuning into this week's episode of Bite-Sized Cybercrime, and until next time, stay secure.